Hello everybody, and you tuned in once again to Cragcore. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the content, like the video and subscribe to the channel. In fact, do it either way. Alright, show our brother some love. Okay, so no preamble today, no crazy long intro or shouting at bad drivers through the rearview mirror. We're just going to get straight into this. Now, obviously, I am one opinionated guy, okay? And today is no different. Guess what? Today is no different. I'm going to give you my opinion on something else. So, before we start, actually, I do need to just say as a disclaimer to YouTube. Now, if you get to see this video, if you're watching this right now, it's because YouTube haven't banned this video. But I would just like to say to YouTube, this is clearly and simply just my opinion. Okay, I'm putting two things side by side and I am going to analyze them in a very small way and put them parallel to see the similarities. Okay, I'm not saying that this is the case. It is literally just my opinion. Okay, so now I've got that out of the way, let's get straight into it. There are some stark similarities, in my opinion, once again, I need to stress, between the vaccine, the COVID vaccine rollout, and COVID in general, and Nazi eugenics. There we go. Just process that for a minute. Nazi eugenics. You're going to say, what the? Nah, man. But yes, trust me. The other night, I actually did a little bit of research to back my opinion. In fact, that's where my opinion came from. I had a suspicion and I decided to just look it up, which is something everybody should do. I'm always going on about that, aren't I? Always. You're probably getting sick of hearing about it. I'm like a broken record. Who cares? So here we go. You still come back to listen though, don't you? You still come back to watch these videos. So anyway, Nazi eugenics and COVID. Now, you're saying to yourself, where the hell are these similarities, yo? Well, I'm going to tell you. COVID, coronavirus, C-19, whatever you want to call it. It targets, now this is apparently considering that it's true, all right? Now, I ain't saying that this thing's real. I'm not saying it's not real. All I'm saying is, based on what we've been told, because that is the fundamental crux, okay? The one thing we have to remember with all of this, there's so much conjecture, there's so much, differing information out there, that who knows what to believe. But let's just, for argument's sake, just say that what we've been told is true, all right? That this thing is a virus that targets certain people more than it does do others, all right? Okay. But who does it target? Well, they say it targets people with vulnerabilities, okay? They say it targets people with vulnerabilities, those with underlying health conditions. Now, you've got to look at the mask agenda, the rollout, the implementation upon society, okay? They say that if you don't wear a face covering, that is because you have got an underlying issue. Okay, now this could be anything that causes harm or distress by wearing one. Trust me, again, there is a preamble to this. I am making a point. You will see the point, so just bear with me. The masks, in my opinion, are a visual representation as to say who's on board and who isn't. Okay, or technically you could say, since we're talking about this in the sense of it all being real, you would be able to see by those who aren't wearing masks who has underlying health problems. Okay, so identifiable by a physical way to say they've got something that isn't necessarily seen. They're a weak link, basically. Okay, because the strong members of society don't need to not worry, but they don't need to worry about it. They can just put a mask on because they don't have anything that stops them doing so in a medical way. So all of this is being guided towards the vulnerable, okay, and those with issues, okay, underlying issues of one way or another, whether it's health, whether it's mental, all these issues, okay, are being pointed out and are glaringly obvious to the rest of the public. Now let's take a look at the Nazi eugenic program. Well, with the eugenics, what was it? Okay, it was basically a breeding program and mass genocide to basically breed out the weak. So what these people went about and did was they slaughtered thousands upon thousands of people that had, say, medical conditions, mental issues, various different people that were considered vulnerable, okay? What they also did was sterilize thousands upon thousands of people. Okay, now all of this information is readily available out there on the internet. Just type in Nazi eugenics into Google. This is all I did. And you will see that this information, you will probably come across the exact same page as I did, and you will say, wow, yeah, word for word, pretty much, that's exactly what Cragcore was on about. So they sterilized thousands and thousands of people. So basically, they are getting, and the people they sterilized were, again, the vulnerable, those with underlying conditions, okay? Now, I have heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but something has just popped back in my head. I heard that COVID has the potential to render men sterile. Or was it the vaccine? I can't remember which one it was. But again, you can see similarities, okay? Now, the vaccines. The vaccine is experimental. When you start piecing this together, it is apparently, I haven't looked massively into the vaccines. There's so much information out there and so much differing information. I should have perhaps done so before I made this video, but I haven't, and I'm just going to wing it on the fly. Apparently, from what I have heard so far, and from the small amount that I've read, it's an mRNA altering vaccine. So ultimately, it's not necessarily a vaccine at all. It's more like gene therapy. So ultimately, it doesn't render you. This is apparently, all hearsay. Apparently, it doesn't actually render you immune. It just it does something with symptoms. So literally, you're in the same boat. Because if you weren't going to have the symptoms before, because let's just say 95% of the people that get this, that's just a number I've pulled out of the air. I'm not saying that is the case, are potentially asymptomatic. So you're going to be in the same boat, aren't you? And apparently it doesn't actually do anything for your immunity. So, what's the point? But anyway, let's just say gene therapy, okay? That's the bottom line. Gene therapy? Okay, so would that not be a perfect delivery system if you are, say, I don't know, a Nazi, a fascist, or somebody who, let's just say, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Nazis these days. People that are into eugenics, therefore outbreeding, or breeding out, rather, the vulnerable. Okay, so in order to create this strong race of people, some people would say it's a good idea. Some people would say it's not a good idea. Some people would say natural selection and all of that. Let nature do its thing. The weak will eventually die out. Who knows? Okay, that's all up there for discussion, isn't it? But let's just go back to the point. The vaccine system would potentially be, if you're looking at it, if you are, say, a eugenics supporter and you're in a position to promote this to the world, and you want, people to, you basically want to implement eugenics on society. Let's just say it's simple. Then, a delivery system such as vaccines that are mRNA altering would be a good system, right? Because who knows what it's altering? They're not going to tell you that, are they? Because it's experimental. So anything that comes from this, especially when you start looking at the liability, which is zero, of the companies that are manufacturing these things, it's going to be, well, it was experimental. We told you so. But it was a global emergency, you know, so you took it willingly because you were scared. And we told you couldn't go on holiday. Anyway, there is an even bigger point here to be made and an even bigger connection between the two, okay? COVID, the whole situation, eugenics. Let's just recalibrate. Who runs the world? Okay, who is in control of the world? Because make no mistake, the world is controlled and governed. Okay, now we think our governments are ultimately separate and are working independently of one another. No. Okay, we get given lies, you know, and fake shit like the EU. You know what? No one's really against each other, man. This is my opinion. No one's really against each other. How could they be? How could they be? There is quite clearly like a capstone of a pyramid that is controlling the governments, okay? Whether through force or coercion, fear, all these different things, or whether they're just doing it willingly. Maybe they're all part of this same old group and they're just like, yeah, bugger the lot of them. But then you have to say, okay, for argument's sake, who, given this is true, who would then be a part of this? Well, you'd have to start looking high up in society. Given we're talking about a pyramidal system here, so, you know, the higher you go. So you'd be looking at people like royal families, okay? Now let's just look at royal families for a minute. Because royal families are all connected, they're interbred, okay? They breed with one another and marry with one another based on keeping connections, okay? So ultimately, the royal families of the world are potentially all one family, okay? Because they do it through marriage. They always have done. If you learned anything at school, basic history told you that this queen married this king for this reason, and that meant that family and that family were combined, and so on and so forth. So it's one big family. And wars, when they were carried out, were likely carried out due to behind the scenes family bloody feuds. Tell me I'm wrong. When you look at it like that, you think, well, Austria, Germany, all they were perhaps, you know, they are literally the same family as you know, the British royal family, and so on. And basically, the Romanovs in Russia, the same family. When they fight against one another, they're not fighting against strangers. They're fighting amongst family. Okay, so we are basically the tools, the pawns in a family feud at this point. Now, again, bear with me, I am going somewhere with this. So, we can establish that those high up in our society, those high up in positions of power to make decisions, are ultimately those such as royal families, etc. And people above them, people that have lots of money, okay? Now, let's look, just for this particular video, at royal families. Now, if anybody doesn't know this, our royal family, the British royal family, the Windsors, haven't always been called the Windsors, okay? In 1917, the Windsor family had their name changed from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, a German royal family, okay? Now this goes back to Queen Victoria and so on and so on. They're Germans. I'm sorry to break it to you, but our royal family are German. You can look it up. They changed their name to Windsor in 1917 for, guess what? Public relations, because we were at war with Germany. Well, they were at war with themselves. And basically, they thought that the British public might not want to get behind them fully because they are German themselves. So to basically get support from the public, they changed their name to Windsor, and it hasn't changed since. They're still the Windsors. Okay, so our royal family is German. Remember, we're still on this whole coronavirus COVID situation, Nazi eugenics. Okay, Nazi eugenics, it didn't start in Germany. It started in California, believe it or not. The Californians were attempting to, create a perfect race through eugenics before the Nazis. Well, guess who headed the team of researchers in California? It's a name you're all going to know if you've looked at anything to do with the Nazis. Yes, his name is Mengele. Look it up. It's on the internet. Mengele, okay? The guy who ultimately then went to Auschwitz and continued his work there. Now, this is where it starts to get extremely web-like, okay? And some dots can be joined up easier than others. Some tend to be a little bit more fleeting than others. However, you can see a big picture. When Mengele was in California doing his eugenics research, it was under a society, so an organization, a funded organization, and it was known as the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology. Now, this was the study of anthropological science and stuff like that, so it kind of fell that they were doing human science too, human anthropology too, okay? So ultimately, again, with it being an institute, it has to be funded by somebody. Now, who was funding this institute? You might ask the question. It was the Rockefellers, okay? The Rockefellers. They're into everything, right? And the main Rockefeller dude, the old Rockefeller geezer, I don't even know if he's alive still, but he was quoted to have said that he believes that depopulation is something that should happen in the third world. Now, we're all part of the earth. Yeah, we're all part of the world, okay? So ultimately, if they're going to be doing it in the third world, well, they're going to do it to us too. Let's face it, we're all human beings and all life is valuable. So, and depopulation in one part of the planet, it's just as bad as doing it in another part of the planet. It's not their right. It really isn't their right. Okay? Anyway, back on point. Let's keep this focused. Apparently, the Rockefellers stopped funding Mengele when he went over to Germany. However, if you look at situations with the CIA and the oil scenarios and stuff like that, they all have different companies with different names that can be tied back to them that funded different things. So, did he really stop funding? Did they really stop funding Mengele? I don't know. But they did fund an awful lot of stuff with the war, in the Second World War at least, with regards to steel and bullets and all these other things. And oil and things like this. So their hands are dirty somewhere along the line, right? So you can kind of then make the connection that there was probably something going on with the First World War too. Okay, the Second World War, eugenics, Nazi eugenics. Okay, it's all going ahead, right? Remember, we said a name, didn't we? The Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology. Well, who was Kaiser Wilhelm? Kaiser Wilhelm was the Emperor of Germany, okay? Direct descendants being the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, okay? So, what have you got here? Let's just look at it. Because the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas are the Windsors, are the British royal family. So you've got royal families deeply entrenched with parts of the world, okay, that have been involved with certain people and certain projects and certain organizations, okay, that support such things as eugenics, okay? These are the same types of people that are going to be able to make decisions for the world and fund other organisations that can push those decisions, like the government, on the world in order to get people in a position, a state of mind, willing enough to accept certain things. Now, David Icke likes to talk about something called problem, reaction, solution. Now, I am a big believer in this. It's literally you create a problem, you get the reaction, and then you offer the solution. People wouldn't have accepted it unless you would have created the problem in the first place. So, Mr. David Icke, if you watch this, thank you for your work and for your knowledge, okay? And for giving us phrases and terminologies to use ourselves, such as problem, reaction, solution, because it does get it in a nutshell, doesn't it? So ultimately, the problem being the virus, the reaction being, oh my God, and the solution being the virus, the vaccine, which could ultimately be the virus, all right? Freudian slip there, perhaps. Anyway, so what are we looking at here? We've painted the picture, okay? If you've followed me this far, 22 minutes in, then you should be starting to see the similarities, as I do, between the situation between COVID, the vaccine rollout, the coronavirus stuff, etc., and the Nazi Eugenics program. It would be the perfect delivery system, okay? And it would also be the perfect way to depopulate the planet, should that be what it is they are trying to do, okay? Or at the very least, render us more submissive. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'll leave it with you to decide. These are just my thoughts and opinions, my little tiny bit of research. It was literally 15 to 20 minutes. This video has come from 15 to 20 minutes of sitting on the sofa with my my mobile phone and researching via Google. So please, by all means, I would urge you to go away and just look at these situations and look at the similarities for yourself. You might find something I haven't found. Please let me know. Okay? The comments section below is for that very purpose. Now, I'm going to leave you there, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. And this is Cragcore, signing off. Love and peace to all things everywhere. One love.